So I'm hoping that I'm only going to talk for a little bit and then the rest of you are going to talk for the rest of it. So ephemeralization. I really had to say that 20 million times in the mirror just to even be able to say it correctly here for you. Yes. What is this concept? The word itself has many syllables and it's kind of off-putting. Very simply, it's a fancy way of saying doing more with less. That's a little more approachable, right? So, what are we talking about here? At the heart of our option for total human success, which is kind of a lofty concept, but we'll come back to that, is this principle of ephemeralization. This is the word Buckminster Fuller uses to describe humanity's proven ability to progressively do more with less. As our technological and scientific know-how accumulates and our mind keeps discovering new general principles, our ability to accomplish more and more functionality with less and less energy, material, and time investment expands. Ephemeralization is one of the most important guidelines for design in general. In this, again, we're talking design of things, materials, and people, including self. Bucky tells us, and we've heard this before, don't attempt to reform a man. An adequately organized environment will permit humanity's original innate success. So this is what he's alluding to, this concept of continued improvement that is wrapped up in this one tidy word. The concept of ephemeralization, tells us that one key aspect to the connection between ephemeralization and digital fabrication, and that is that it's the opportunity it provides to produce tangible objects on demand. And this is an example, I apologize. So the idea of an on-demand production shows you a way that we're being slightly more efficient, and we're trying to do a little more with a little less. In his book, 9 Chains to the Moon, he has this great quote that seems very tangential, but I can see the connections, and I'm hoping that by the end of this little section, you will as well. So, and this, I just love this quote, so maybe it's just my excuse to share it. The question is survival, and the answer is and the answer is unit. I'm going to try that one more time. Sorry, guys. The question is survival, and the answer, which is unit, lies in the progressive sum totaling of man's evolving knowledge. Individual survival is identifiable with the whole as extension or extinction. There is no good old country doctor on Mars to revive us to revive those who through mental inertia are streamlining into extinction. To me, that is a fantastic way of saying, get off your ass and wake up, move, right? So that is a very basic way of bringing up this concept. And I have all kinds of quotes and definitions and such that, I've pulled through all his different works and such. And he's telling us that as technology advances, it does become possible to do more with less. So he coined this word specifically to oppose the concept of scarcity. So scarcity tells us that at some point, we're going to have so many people that we will not have enough resources. And this is a problem that is just absolute. Bucky contends that if we are engaging in ephemeralization, this will not come to be, because we will find ways to be more efficient, and we're going to make more using less. This is also the answer to the so many things that we're finding today plaguing us. Our issues with, damaging nature in various different ways can be resolved by finding ways to more efficiently do other things. So the goal of ephemeralization is to make human systems more sustainable, reducing their impact on the environment and maximizing the benefits they provide to society. This concept has been seen to show and have a significant impact in fields such as architecture, engineering, and sustainable design. And we have conversations and discussions happening daily on how to create more efficient and effective systems for a better future. Bucky discussed the concept of ephemeralization throughout many of his works and his lectures and his essays. And in these works, he emphasized the importance of using technology to create more efficient systems and to reduce waste. But every time he did so, he's reminding us of the why. And the why is to create a sustainable future. So from a philosophical perspective, the concept of ephemeralization can be discussed in terms of the relationship between technology and human values. So if ephemeralization represents a step towards a more efficient and sustainable society, and sustainable future, then it stands to reason that we can make that argument also for a more efficient and sustainable society, as it would allow us to achieve our goals with fewer resources. And this increased efficiency can hopefully align with human values. And the question here is, and I mentioned this to Shrikant, Bucky doesn't, at least I haven't, please correct me if I'm wrong, I have not found throughout various works of Bucky's where he explicitly talks about these human values such as fairness, justice, and equality in tandem with his vision of ephemeralization. But I see it indirectly. He's telling us that we can do more with less, right? So if we're going to do more with less, I feel like we cannot only consider the tangible things like, climate control or making stronger bridges with less materials. We look here in the 52 Living Ideas where we're seeking that fourfold path, right? So acting, thinking, intuiting, and feeling, taking a little bit of liberty with Shrikant's far more eloquent way of saying it, right? But how do we view ephemeralization in these ways? Because I really think it would be a mistake to only look at it from the perspective of widgets and physical systems. We have to take it into the realm of the interpersonal, the realm of the societal, because that's a vein of our lives that desperately needs for us to figure out how to do more with less. So what I was looking at here is that if we look at the actin vein for ephemeralization, this is this is where you're creating your systems. You're making them more efficient, more effective, and we are acting upon our environment. If we're doing it, and we're obviously, in this case, the thinking would probably go before the acting, because Bucky is very much about walking with intention. And in the thinking, the question is, how can we use technology to create more efficient systems and reduce waste, right? And if the goal is to create a more sustainable future, another thinking question has to be similar, but slightly changed. How can we use technology to improve the quality of life for individuals. And remember that a community is nothing but a group of individuals. So if we are improving the life of individuals, we're going to make stronger communities. We're going to make stronger culture, stronger countries, and hopefully stronger humanity, right? Lofty goal, but I think we're up for the challenge. So this is the thinking, the acting. If we're intuiting and we're looking at doing more with less, the question there is, what things in nature provide us with models for moving forward with increased efficiency? How can we leverage off of that which already exists? And because it already exists, this is more of a we're going to use our intuition. We're going to kind of look around and see what's already there. And the heart, how are we going to bring the heart into this? Because we need to bring the heart so that we can find ways to be doing more with less. And in this one, what I'm saying is what we're going to do is we're going to ask ourselves, what does it, I just scrolled up, sorry. What does it mean to be human in a rapidly changing world? How can we reject the you versus me mentality that allows us to be okay with the concept of scarcity? Because if we accept the concept of scarcity, we're accepting that I have to elbow you out of the way so that I can grab the last piece of bread. But that's not doing more with less. So if we're bringing in the heart to this conversation, we're going to work to banish that and invite other ideas. If you'll notice, I cheated a little bit. These are all questions. For each one of these avenues, I've posed a question for you. And that's intentional. And I have so many more things and little quotes I can add for you, but I just wanted to start with giving you questions and making you think, because the part of that living adjective is the thinking part. And so I am going to invite anyone who has more knowledge on this concept than me to please chime in, or if any of this, if you need clarification questions, type exclamation mark, and let's get into a discussion about this. And if anything is unclear, please let me know. I can give you more stuff. I try to make this very approachable, because it's in so many of Bucky's works, he does approach it from a very strict, more censored systems concept when he's talking about it directly. But indirectly, I think he's talking about all of it. Thank you, Shrikant.
Thank you, Maritza. So folks, we're going to do this in 2 steps. So firstly, people who are familiar with this idea of Bucky to some extent, if you would like to add anything about ephemeralization, I'm going to invite you to do that. This is a good time, because more we have for people to think about, the better. And then I'm going to open it up for any comments, any thoughts, any questions. So does anybody want to add anything to what was said about ephemeralization? Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of ephemeralization, I just went right to Synergetics. And that's, kind of the Bible. When it says, we may say that thinking about the truth alters truth, but only to the extent of defining it. We may always clarify and redefine the truth by making it more comprehensibly considerate and more incisively exquisite. Truth alters truth only by refining the definition. The substance of sensing and instrumental control of physical means of communication is always refinable and tends towards ephemeralization of doing ever more with ever less. But you can never get to the exact, most economical statement of truth, for the very communication will have ephemeralized to pure metaphysics. Truths are like generalized principles, interaccommodative and non-contradictory truths are special case realizations and generalized principles. By these very aspects, they are discovered to be truths. So I look at this, and yeah, that's like kind of a mouthful, and because it's synergetics. But if you look at it, what is truths? Specifically alters truth, and you kind of break it down a little bit. And one of the things that you can think of, and that's often associated with ephemeralization, or even any of these other laws like Moore's law or Wright's law, which is actually a much less known but much more accurate way of predicting progress, technological progress, is that something that is at its basic, it just means that you learn by doing. And essentially, the cost of production is the cost of producing a good it goes down as related to the production experience. So as you're doing something, the costs actually go down. And so that's a way of actually looking at this. And why is that important? Because there's like some basic premises that underpin like Wright's law. The things that basically underlie it are like essentially the more experience, the more efficient labor you have, the standardization happens within that framework. Specialization happens within that framework. And it should be noted that actually Bucky did mention that he took some of this idea of, he uses the assembly line as an example of ephemeralization. Even Henry Ford's, so it kind of, and Henry Ford's assembly line relates to specialization. But the most important thing, and this is what was true with the TetraMeme, is the idea of the feedback loop. And that feedback loop is essentially a way of actually you're getting back more information and you're becoming more efficient in the process itself. And that's what he's kind of talking about specifically when he's talking about the sensing of instrumental control of physical means of communications is always refinable and tends towards ephemeralization. That the communication aspect of it, the feedback loop that's coming, is actually you're getting that and you're getting more efficient in that process. So that's the idea that the way I kind of look at as ephemeralization is that I look at it something is that it's a process where you're continually improving. Now, it's a lot deeper than that. It's not just a simple business model. It goes beyond that. It goes into the metaphysical aspects of things. And that's kind of where what Maritza was talking about, what he was countering was the idea of scarcity, specifically Malthus's hypothesis that food is a fixed variable, as is population is a fixed variable. And so as opposed to looking at it as to how that food production increases, and he didn't look at it as far as the efficiencies that could possibly be. He only looked at what was and didn't necessarily look at what was possible. And that's what ephemeralization kind of gets to. It allows you to predict more about the future. Essentially, it doesn't limit you to current conditions. So, I mean, that's the way I look at it, is looking at it through these. I think they play out more through these laws. These laws are not generalized principles. It should be noted that these are not rooted in nature. They're just, hypotheses. But they do help at least prove some of the ideas with ephemeralization. One last thing I'll say is that was the important thing about the spiral with the TetraMeme. When they talked about it, the last part about it was about feedback that was coming back into the loop. So that part it started out with context, and it's like a special case, which was, what he talked about in Synergetics, the whole process that they went through ended up with what kind of feedback loop they were coming back. And that's what allowed them to do more and more with less and less. That was just part of it anyway. So
Thank you, Joe. Great comments. Thank you. Ravi, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to one paragraph quote that carries on from Maritza's comments earlier. It's from Pohl and Pedagogy of the Oppressed. True generosity consists precisely in fighting to destroy the causes which nourish false charity. False charity constrains the fearful and subdued, the rejects of life, to extend their trembling hands. True generosity in striving so that these hands, whether of individuals or entire peoples, need be extend less and less in supplication, so that more and more they become human hands which work and working transform the world. And I think relating to Bucky's aspirations in his breadth of work, this is honestly one of the most comparative quotes I've found in relating and researching his work, that's really inspired me to not only go into more detail as to how he has just offer things to just say, hey, these are things that you can apply to your personal life, your family life, your community life. And to that extension, I hope we continue that direct application of how do we get this, these teachings into our daily lives. Like, what is it that do we need to just relate to aspects that Bucky saw in the political sense, in the economic sense, in the cultural sense, in the ecological sense, and combine these things into a pattern, as he would like, in that four square knowledge, and just recreate it here within 1511 ideas, but in the broader sense as well.
Thank you, Ravi. All right. Anybody else wants to comment? Go ahead. Maritza, go ahead.
I just want to add something that I think complements both actually what Ravi said and Joe did. So Bucky, he hoped that the streamlining effects of a more 60-degree based approach within natural philosophy would help to bridge the gap, as it were, between and like differing cultures, and that he would find a result of greater level of scientific literacy in the general population, because he thought that a greater scientific understanding would lead us now to understand this idea of less energy consumption from a perspective of being more stable. But he translates it to like kind of like social commentary, in that he's saying, so he identified ephemeralization as the trend towards accomplishing more with less physical resources, but he said it was as a result of increasing comprehension of generalized principles, which Joe has been talking about. So one of the generalized principles that he brings up often is E equals MC squared. Now, just about all of us are familiar with that concept, and he talks about energy conservation from that perspective. In other words, the mites, the minimum tetrahedron, it serves as a base for being more energy conservative than just about any other shape you're going to find out there. And what he says is that it is dissipative, and the goal and the focus that he's looking at when he's looking at automation and things like that is from that perspective, that we need to seek ways within ourselves to be more energy conservative, as it were. And that's what he's alluding to. So something that I think is absolutely brilliant is that he takes something like this, that's just a very science thing, there's no room for argument on whether or not the might, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a scientist, but as I understand it, it's a generally accepted idea that, the might is, one of the most energy conservative shapes out there. And then he takes that and he makes the corollary of where that fits into the schema of our everyday lives. And I think that that's what we're hoping to do here. That's the whole purpose of this series. We're going to take his very difficult concepts and we're going to bring them down to our level, and hopefully together we'll understand them a little better and figure out how we can grab them and walk forward with them and kind of divvy them out to others that we meet along the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. Next up is Rupali.
Thank you. This is very exciting, Maritza and Joe and Ravi, what you've said. I want to just say that, one of the things that Maritza read earlier was about the environment and how that affects just how we live, the social aspects of our living, and also the intellectual aspects of our living. So designing the environment to suit human living. And I think as an educator for me, goes back to Maria Montessori's emphasis on the environment for the child. Applies the same way for adults. The second thing I wanted to say is the call to action, where, Maritza, you said it very simply, don't just sit, get up and get going. And so that call to action, and we saw that whether it's in the Gita or the Bible, it was go act, just don't dwell on things. So one of the things that Ravi asked is, how do we get to make it a part of our life? These teachings or these learnings that we are involved in together. I think it's through the actions. Bucky always talked about taking action. And so if we are mindful on a day-to-day basis and actually do things together, the first step is in learning about it with 52 living ideas. The second step would be to actually do things. And one thing I see with children is that they just play with these ideas, right? They just play with the shapes. They play with structures. I think as adults, we need to do a little more of that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Rupali. So I want to add a couple of things here. I also want to play with some shapes here as well. But before that, I'll go to Becky. Becky, go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the parts about systems and tie it in with ephemeralization. And if we think about what you had mentioned earlier with relations and how one system interacts with another, and if these systems are part of a larger system, we can see it as how we interact with each other, going back to what Maritza had said and Rupali, and if we also keep in mind that the interactions and the relations add more, and going to the idea of like the sum of the parts are more, the sum of the parts are, sorry, I'm getting this wrong. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. Then if we can interact with each other in a very thoughtful way that's designed well, because you can have good and bad designs, then it's giving and it's creating, and we reap so much more. And that constant interaction, those positive life-giving interactions creates something so much brighter for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bucky. Becky, not Bucky, Becky. Sorry, Becky. Sorry to call you Bucky. Hope you excuse it. Next, I want to, Becky and I had gone to meet with Tom Miller, and he talked about one of the concepts, and I want to relate it to this concept of ephemeralization. He uses this concept. I don't know whether this is Bucky's concept or Tom's concept, but he calls it most effective minimum state, MEM state. Okay, so what is it? It says effectiveness in nature is a practical balance between choice and usefulness. When you look to natural world for building ideas, you discover a wide variety of methods to do the same thing. Evolution is about individual choice. Variety coupled with sustainability could define a basic usefulness. So variety coupled with sustainability. Sustainability grows out of minimum state, which has 4 basic characteristics. So what are the 4 characteristics of this MEM state? Most effective minimum state. 1, most economical in the use of material and space. 2, least effort to realize and replicate. 3, most accommodating to change. And 4th, a measuring system that connects the individual to the bigger whole system. Now, I really like this concept because it's like the cell. It's like the system which lives by itself in its smallest, simplest form, which can combine with other systems naturally. So cell is to me is the perfect example of that. And life is built out of cells. And then there is a pattern that follows, like the golden ratio of these cells kind of building on one another in a circular formation that form a spiral, but each having a certain nature. They have everything that they need in order to live. The cells do. And they build unlimited, they not unlimited, but within the limits, whatever is possible, they can grow with that. So that's a very profound idea because it captures many of these things together. Maritza was talking about these 4 functions. And the reason I like the 4 functions is that it's the minimum state. Like it has everything that you need right there in this one unit. It has your deepest intuitions, your connection with the Tao, connection with the core of the principles governing nature, and your openness to that. That is what intuition is all about. It's like your openness to saying, world is what it is, and I will listen to it. I will listen to whatever the world is. Doesn't matter what I think, I will listen to the world. I'm always open to that. So that's the intuition. Then you have to verbalize it. You have to put it in explicit terms. This is all about identifying the general laws that Bucky talks about. Then you have to act on it. That's the point that Rupali was making, that you have to bring that into life. And then you have to have the right concomitant emotion which is a sense of beauty or love, which accompanies this process. It is the deepest principles being made here on earth, making something according to that, produces that kind of aesthetic reaction in you. And all of it is one unit. And all of it builds on one another. If you focus on one of them, then you go awry. If you just focus on your emotions, you will go awry. If you just focus on your thoughts and ignore the feedback of the Tao, of what nature is telling you, you will go awry. If you stop listening to your emotions, which are actually giving you some feedback, you will go awry. If you try to do thought without action, you will go awry. So this is the system that is going to keep you on track. And it's a very simple system. It is thought, action, emotion, and intuitions all together. Now, Maritza pointed out that Bucky talks mostly about the thought or mostly about material things. What about the intuition? And what about the heart? How does this apply here? Okay, I'll venture to answer that. In terms of the emotion, right? The most wasteful emotion is that of fear, of being kind of scared of life itself, of existence, of other people, and that really stops you. So you will have all these emotions, but they're not going to get anywhere. So that is, I would say, removing that. I think that there is a principle of via negativa, that you have to cut things out in order to get to the minimum state. It's like you have all this stuff, okay, all this stuff, and you have to be willing to remove stuff, which is not part of the system that grows, because by being there, it is actually clogging up your ability to grow. The cells cannot grow because there is all this junk all around it. So you have to be willing to throw that away. And that is difficult emotionally because you want to hold on to it. We are attached to our emotions, to our thoughts, to our habits, to our intuitions. So that kind of letting go is necessary for rebirth, for rejuvenation. And this applies for thoughts. One of the quotes I like very much is that, this is in like Virtues of Rationality. It says that I will give up falsehoods as fast as I possibly can. I'm just paraphrasing it, but that quickness with which you throw away your ideas that don't conform to reality. The same thing with the emotions, the same thing with intuitions, because our intuitions are not always right. So again, it's a question of being I've talked a little bit about the emotional part. The intuition part is the approach to reality, the approach to the Tao, where you say, it is what it is. And you will let all your intuitions that are contradictory to that die. Again, it's all about removing that, because there is no way to get to the minimum state. There is no way to do more with less if you just have more. And if you hold on to the more, you will never get to the less. And I really like Tom's formulation of it. You're not trying to give up everything. No, you're trying to get to the core living thing from which you will grow. You're just giving up things which are not living. And it's not just that they're bad. It can be things, Marshall McLuhan uses the technology, the idea of technology. It's like if you have enhanced something too much, out of proportion with its proper function, it will have negative impacts on other things. So you have to retrieve your humanness. You have to retrieve the balance of these four things that support each other. If one of these is 10 times as big, it will no longer be a tetrahedron. It will break. The connections will break between them, and it will be imbalanced. So that's what I think about this idea of most effective minimum state. So again, I'm going to open it up for any comments, any thoughts. Firstly, Maritza, what do you think?
So I have here in my notes, I wrote a little scribble when I was reading, and it says, we are collectively going to redesign our future. We should consider truthfully what is important and what is not. We should show ourselves the privilege of letting go of lovingly administered nonsense and to do our own thinking. So I feel like you reached into my brain and said that far more eloquently. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Any comments? And at this time, I want to open it up for any kind of closing thoughts or anything that anybody wants to add.
Oh, while folks are collecting their thoughts, let me leave them with a couple more words from Bucky. Oh wait, no, there's Becky.
Let's go with Becky first and then Bucky. Becky.
Yeah, I really liked the MEM from Tom, because it allows you to have that that upper bound and that lower bound. And so the upper bound is, are you being wasteful? Are you using additional energy that's not needed to achieve what you want to achieve? And that lower bound is, did you incorporate everything that you have set out to accomplish? And so there's a way to judge that action or project or design in that it is sustainable, but it's also intentionally useful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Maritza, go ahead. You've been looking at this ephemeralization for some time. I'm sure we've not covered much of what it is, but please go ahead.
No, we've tried, but I think we're grasping some of the major chunks of it. Something that Bucky says when speaking about himself just points, first of all, to the absolute humble nature of this man, and secondly, to a way for us to help to wrap ourselves around internalizing this concept for ourselves in a very individual, personal perspective. So I did read you guys the quote of when he's talking about making mistakes and how he's very swift to acknowledge them. And he has, in the same chapter, he has another line, which I think is just, it's very, very poignant. And he says, I don't want a reader of this chronicle to think that I am anything other than what I am, an average, healthy human being with all the attendant weaknesses and vulnerabilities. What is important is that the reorientation of my life and the criteria of its conduct did render such an average human being more effective than under conventional circumstances. Why that quote? Because that quote says that we don't have to be special to practice ephemeralization. We can, all of us, strive to be more effective in ourselves. And just imagine if you're striving very hard to be more effective and you encounter other souls striving very hard to be effective. In that interaction, it's going to be more effective. You're going to be, each of you in your own way, seeking that mem state in everything you do. And if we could manage to have that increase exponentially with interactions and spreading, I think that that's the vision that is being painted here. If we're looking at ephemeralization through a social lens, it's the idea of make yourself more efficient and do it in such a manner that you're managing to be more, it's the more efficient should, there's the other component that Bucky says in other of his words is it should never be at the cost of anyone. So you're not really being more efficient if you got to the train station platform. You made it to the train because you knocked down Granny on her way in. So the idea here is, if you're doing things in a way that's causing less friction, it's going to be smoother. And then if we interact with less friction and we keep interacting with others with less friction, there's less energy being expended or wasted. So there's, the energy is going to be more conserved. And as we go forward, we're going to be increased. Now, Bucky's overarching desire was to be seeking continually the betterment of humanity. So I just want to remind you of that, because that's, I have all these other quotes and such written down, but honestly, I started writing them. And by the time I was done researching and looking at them, I really thought that the major thing that I really wanted you guys to take away today and focus on is the idea of start with yourself, move it forward, and remember that it's not just about the systems. If you can make your calendar and your email extremely sufficient, sure, that's great. But if you don't manage to do it on an interpersonal human level, you're not really solving the issue of all of us being inefficient, of all of us being very energy wasteful, because none of us is striving towards that mem state that Shrikant described for us, which is what Bucky is entreating for all of us to do. I'm gonna stop there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Maritza. So folks, there is no alternative, no substitute for reading Bucky yourself. Okay, because no matter how much we talk about him, all original minds have actually a lot more than the specific ideas that they talk about, because really their approach to ideas, their approach to life is something that is far more valuable. His independence of saying that I will try to understand the world myself, going to ignore what everybody else is saying around me. I'm going to look at only the things that I can experience and see myself and build things up from there. And I will take whatever chances in order to live. So there are some really very deep things in him. And we are just beginning to see it. It's like I'm delighted that so many of people who know Bucky so well are coming here to lecture, coming here to present. I was blown away by what Struppi did, with all of these stuff, and I've learned to do a few things myself. You know, I was just, again, you know, what Tom showed us. I mean, look at this idea of mem here, and look at everything that he's done. And then there was, you know, John and Yoshimi who came. There was, you know, Kirby, who presented some core ideas of synergetics. And you know, the presentation by Curt was incredible. He's the guy who is writing the book on the comprehensivity of Buckminster Fuller. And I hope to have these folks back. And, you know, Richard has been contributing tremendously to almost, you know, many of these meetups. So it's really amazing to see all of these folks contributing, and not just contributing, they, you know, it's like Kirby put it very beautifully, that, you know, we are interacting a lot more with each other. And I did not know the works of some of these people, and I've just discovered them. And thank you. You know, he's been in this field for a long time. And that conversation is what, you know, we have been doing in 52 Living Ideas on field after field. And I'm delighted that we are doing this for, you know, for Bucky. And I have to, you know, give my thanks to CJ, who was the trim tab, who got many of us, you know, started along many of these paths, and so many of us on so many different paths, and all of them are, you know, leading to this comprehensivity. So, so thank you, CJ, for this. You know, it's been amazing start, and this is just a start. So we are going to be building up on it. So let me tell you about what is coming up. This Saturday, we have Lucy Bevan, who was a collaborator of Jack Panksepp, who is one of the seminal thinkers on affective neuroscience. He's really profound thinker. And Lucy has just written a book on Shortcut to Effective Neuroscience, where she takes it's a short book, and she takes all the major theories of affective neuroscience and compares them to each other. And she's, you know, we've had her come before, and she reached out to me saying that I would love to come and talk to 52 Living Ideas about it. So she's going to be on, and I'm delighted to have my friend Michael, who will be interviewing her with me. And, you know, Michael is very, very good. He's the one who introduced me to Jack Panksepp and his work on emotions. So don't miss that. That's going to be at 1 p.m. on Saturday. On Sunday, we're going to have Christopher Zelov, and he's going to be talking about cinematic themes in Bucky. So that's coming up on the Bucky meetups. Tomorrow we have Gospel of John, and day after tomorrow, Evanique and Penny, and Penny's husband are going to be presenting Divine Feminine. And Evanique, would you like to give maybe a 2-minute summary of what is going to happen? This is going to be on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Go ahead, Evanique.
Sure. Thank you, Shrikant. So on Friday, Penny Nelson will actually be giving the presentation on the Minoan civilization and the flowering goddess. And what you're going to see, without giving the presentation away, is you're going to see how that civilization worshipped the divine feminine. There were no real names, as far as I know. It was just the divine feminine presence there. You're going to see a lot of great artwork. You're going to learn a lot about the Minoan culture. And it's going to be a great presentation. If you've if you don't know much about it, I did not know much about it. I thought it was interesting. I've seen the presentation, and we're just going to go through the beginning until the end of the civilization. But one thing of note that, we're doing this series, Divine Feminine, because we noticed the absence of the female in religion. So that's how this came up originally. But in this instance, you're going to see what happens when there isn't really a male, I don't want to say male presence, but when it's off balance. And so I'll leave it there, where there's a lack of masculine energy, or divine masculine is not as present. So you'll see how that works. So I think I'll leave you with that, and join us Friday night.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any closing thoughts? Anybody who has not spoken, you're welcome to speak as well. What did you think of the meetup? Would love to hear anything. Go ahead, Evanik.
I just want to thank you and Maritza. You guys did a great job tonight. Thank you both. I know that was a lot. I'm still taking it all in, so I don't really have like anything significant to add. I just wanted to express my gratitude to you both.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Evanik. Joe, go ahead. What did you think?
I thought it went well. I mean, I really think that, we got to the core of one of Bucky's concepts, and I think this serves as a template for, future Wednesday meetups. I really liked going through the mind map to get ideas. So I think that was really effective as well. So that we got some core ideas on the table, and then we integrated ephemeralization with that. So I think that was an effective way of approaching this meetup. So I look forward to the other ones.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Rupali.
I also agree with what Joe said, and I think this is a nice way of kind of getting into the details of some of his work, and also making it more practical and useful for us. I like this format. Thank you. And great work, Maritza, you, everybody.
Thank you. This was originally Rupali's idea. When we were thinking of, when we were looking at starting this series, we were trying to say, okay, how are we going to get started? So Rupali said, oh, how about starting with the greatest ideas of Bucky? And that was our first meetup. And what we are doing is that we're doing a more expanded version of that. So, all right. Now the next Comprehensivist Wednesday, so that's going to be next Wednesday, is going to be, we're going to have Sanjay back talking about neuroscience. And the week after that, we are going to have Phil, and he's going to do a whole, he has proposed a whole bunch of meetups on language. So we're going to wrap up Eric Orbach's work, looking at modern times and how the modern literature represents a very different sensibility than ancient literature. So it is really amazing topic of saying, it's actually very difficult to figure out how another mind works. And it is even harder to figure out how mind of another time works. And most people by default just look at their own mind and say, oh, that's how everybody's mind works. And that's how all cultures work. And they impose their own ideas about all kinds of things on the words of these people. And what Eric Orbach does is that he actually shows you the difference in sensibilities of different cultures. So you can see the difference. And he's just amazing at doing that. So that's going to be 2 weeks from today. All right, folks, honored to have all of you folks here. just great comments. And Maritza, I think this is a great start. I will give you the final words.
Oh, wait, I get the final words. I'm going to just give you words from something from Bucky. So he's, by exploring the ways in which technology is transforming our relationships with each other and with the natural world, we can gain a deeper understanding of what it means to be alive in the 21st century. So that's a paraphrase of something he wrote. And I love that it talks about doing more with less from the perspective of humans being alive and in communing first with nature.
Thank you, Maritza. Good night, everybody. Bye.